Locho sampo pagyo Toche tempe trinle yarngonda Pege drolor zampe zeparach Lame shabla solvade Omo a guru vajra. I need my books, I don't know where they went.
Yeah, if you left them there, then they're
You know, maybe they are in the office.
Yeah, no problem, I'll find them. Okay.
Manya sarva siddhi hum hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sanek Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sanek Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha San Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Dagi Chitsun Lama Toje Chin Nyamda Dala Toje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Seji Ningne Sowa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Viso Lekshune Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Geme Lunge Drupra Jingelo Sonye Sodanchi Chabe Tse Dunge Namke Yinso Lekshune Labchen Sonye Yonso Zopa Dan Chira Nyedun Chamra Jingelo Chancho Parge Ninsen Tukun To Nyu Peme Sivdro Lekshune Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen Dela Drupra Jingelo Dagi Lona Chela Chokpa Dan Chemin Samjor Ngemba Shiwada Chedan timbe dede malupa bime lungi rubra jingilo Dorna tingne tsira tamche dan teche pardo nekaut Rese kyamne lama kele me tuje chingi dala sikso sol Gongyab drewe nyamda da chala chitsun lame tuje rabgongne Udan sungi nawa drame to nyamsu nyongwe kesan tobra sho Yewa kundu yanda lama dan drame chiki pela longshu chin Sadan lamgi yunde rabzo ne dorje changi koba nyur tobo sho Pakyuke kudanda ki lo pakyuke sundanda ki pakyuke tudanda ki ye teyerme chiktu jingilo pakyuke kudan dhagilo pakyuke sundan dagin pakyuke tudan dagin teyerme chiktu jingilo makyuke kudan dagilo makyuke sundan dagin makyuke tudan dagin teyerme chiktu jingilo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Soha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Soha Om Muni 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 Shakya Munye Soha. Now we do the first part of the Guru Puja. Deche ngale rani lama la kande selve kule veseratso chochur trebe neju chinla pe tapa ranjam bashi yundengi Köpe keba penson sopara gyu rapkara gesen chimbo nganyele dada kanya magen simche nam tene disi chanchu nimpo para lama kuncho sumla kyapsudro namo guru bye namo buddhaya namo sangaya Namo Guru Bhye, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Guru Bhye, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Masimche Kungi Tungi Chir Dani Lama Lhar Gyurne Simche Tamche Lama Lai Koban Chola Kobracha Simche kungi tungi chir dani lama lhar gyurne simche Koban chola kobra cha ma simche kungi tungi chir dani lama lar gyurne simchen tamche lama lai Koban chola kobra cha ma simchen tamche gi tundu dagi tsedi nil Nyurwa nyurwa deme sangye lama lai Koban ngundu che ma simchen tamche dunga le chal Dechen sangye gi sala kobra cha Hei chirtu lamsamo lama lai Nel jura nyamsu langwara gi Om ahum Om ahum Om ahum Owa yeshe la namba nanche danche se soso namba chele wambo drugi chuyu tu dedong Yeshe kebra chengebe sadam pana nange kyan tamche yonso China sangwe chirin tamze chense samge miga pe kangwara kyu Dedong yerme lhala yamba kunsan chirin tripe wo Loma meto tribu yunze dogu pasam jimbe tse Donga barwe rinchen triten chuge nida gebe ten Kadrin sumde tsawe lama sangye kungi ngowo nye Namba ngurmi tsimbe gelon shichi chanyi tsumkaradro Chaye chechen yeba nyamsha duzi kangwe longze nang Kurkon damden chogo sum Serdo penshe ula tse tukara kyabda dorje changwa shichi chanyi kudongo Dorje sungne yincho markyu linke dedon rupe ge Nama rinche gengi treshin lase dagi nazel Tempe gende we ser tomba chatsu nange korwe wu dorje kiltron tsulgi shukpe pumbo namda deshenga Kamshi yumshi keje tsagyo pa ngo pabo trajo nidri chikdon yangla chuo wangbo We ser chugyo nujin sawa chikden pana shabki den Tako brinshin ngogyo la Idam kingo la tsoda Sangye chansen pawo kandro tensong gyatso kornesho Nedarago sum dorje sumse honge veser cha gyue ranshin nene yeshe pa Chendra yerme tempa Kunso dele chune tu sumge Tsagyo lama idang kuncho sum Pawo kandro chugyon sumso che Tuche wonge dirshe tempra shu Chona ranshin drobo kunreya Nazo duje sampa chishin tu Chiryan charwe kense tinle che Kyabguen damba korche sheksu su Omo guru buddha bodhisattva Vari ware hyahi Sahum bam Yeshe pana tamse pada Niso me parakyu Kange tuje dewa chimboyi Kusung goban chegyan keche la Tsotse lama rinchen tabuku Dorje chensha pemo Chatse lo arab chan gyalwa kunge yeshe ni Kandu chiryan charwe tabkecho Murme tsimbe karge nero wa Kyabguen dambe shabla chatse lo Nyekuen pacha cheba chuchung shin Pame yunde rinchen sogite Pende malu chungwe gojibu Chitsun lame shabla chatse lo Harche tumba sangye kunge ngo Gete shidon tamchu chungwe Paso kunge una lange wa Chinchen lama namla chatse lo Yusum chochur shube lama dan Rinchen chosum chawe tamche la Teji mebe tuyang gyatso che Shindo nyambe ludru chatse lo Kyabguen chezun lama korche la Natso chirin gyatso bulwani Pele rinche weba nuyan le Dache dutsi chushi deki pa Tombo sima chenwa pele pa Tsebe medo sadan pan Ishin pegi duba bendurye Yarke ngombo chige lalante Nida norbo rapkara tongmetso Tonsu muse vese tsegago Gabo tsenden kurkon trigope Pujon sochen koryo kuneki Roge chuden sacha tonga dan Lada mi shase lombo Nazo romo chiran tanyele Jungwe danyen gyue sasongwe Sutra tiro rikche pekzimpe Chinan dunyo lama chukun kyan Sashi peki chushi medo chan rira linshi nide genpadi Sangye shindu mikde uwargi drugun namda shingla chebra sho chewa chage lingshi lumbroche Rinchen dunda nyewe rinchen so Unga kebe nuchu pinsun tsu lami longchu dugu terchenpo. Dawe semgi pulchun shingechu. Kyabkun tuje chenla ulwaragi. Ye dam guru rana mandra la kam niryata yami. Ngashan yidru yishin gyatso ngo sishin. Kunge yidru shin jikden lede ran shingi. Gosong gewe medo chiyan tra kunsan chebe trinso bumrosh. Lapso rimni lange drende pe gatsen jetsun lama nye chibul. Kurkon damde sambu tringe chen roge pe zingi che tongwa da. Chakyu nga dan droma nga la so chantun barwe dutse gyazo cho. Yon la zo pa zin tru chon shin dube gyutse la ge luram. Shinge nga ge lenge ponye tso tseto gyume chakya nangyab. Chimde choku ranshin tongdan rewe yin. Yerme lundro ma samcho le de tenda chancho semcho kyo labu. Nyomo shigya tsashi necho pe sampo mingi chetra na tsodan. Kyune gichi darren bulana. Namkara jisim baso sondo soyo. Tome dune mige dikpele. Gidan gitse iran chichipa. Tuje chendren chengar gyosemgi. Shakshin lenche mige dongban. Chena ranshi tsema danre ya. Milam jishin keba tamchek. Dega chiryan charwe namkara la. Dacha samba tabe irang. Pulchon kenze chunzin bumrete. Taye drodi pende kunde. Keda yundu neda pewe chira. Sabke chogi charba abdoso. Dorche kula kechik minga ya. Somcho wange kyabo samato. Dacha meba jishin site bara. Nyange mida tabra shososo. Neda chumbe namkara gewe tso. Kadrin sumden jitsun lamai. Sera kundo drame jitsinchi. Soncho dorje changwa top chirngon. Yunden chungne tsurin gyatso che. Mondo norbo tsoge yonsu tam. Urme zimba tongwa nipe che. Neden duwa tsinla sowa de. Kandan dena devra shekwe lam. Tembra webe yunden chudenpa. Malu gyalwe duzan choge che. Tekcho gewe shela sowa de. Gosum ledam lochen sodendra, yudan gyume ngadan gyusheshi. Tenye chusun ridan chekepe, dorje tsimbe tsola sowade. Sange drame jumbe matulwe, maron duke niktu drwala. Deshe lamsan chishin tumbayi, kyabkon tuje chenla sowade. Nima tubgi nubgyurute, gungya mebe drwa mambola. Gyawe tseba nyura druzepe, Gyawa tamchele, kange babu buga chitsaya. Dacha sanam shindo lenga pe, kyabkon tuje chenla sowat. Kusong genge korlo ni, tabge gyuru drawe jogele. Tame tsugi drowa drense pe, kyabkon tuje chenla sowat. Keche yan la nam, deshe ringa yabyon sembata. Chowe wangbo ranshin chosumge, dani lama chola sowade. Kunge yeshe reba le jungwe, kilkor korlo jewe danite. Rige kyabda dorje zimbetso, sumcho tambo gunla sowade. Chime linge gawe reba da, yerme tenyo kungya kungeda. Toma tate kunsan tendamge, chanjo semgo kyola solwade. Kyoni lama kyoni yidan kyoni kandro chogyonte tekne sonde chanchub. Kyomi kyabshe mitsowe didan bardo ch. Sishi jikdro ngodro kunzo tenge trozo pacho sun. Kyoni lama kyoni yidam kyoni kandro chogyonte tekne sonde chanchub bardo kyomi kyabshe mitso. Didam bardo chime taryan tuje chagyo sumso la sishi jikdro ngodro kunzo tenge trozo pacho sun kyuni lama kyuni kyuni kandro chogyon te tingne sonde chancho pardo sishi jikdro ngodro kunzo tenge trozo pacho Kyuni lama kyuni yidang kyuni kandro chogyonte tengne sonde jancho bar kyumi kyabshe mitsowe didang bardo chime taryan tuje chagyo sumsol sishi chikro ngodro kunso tengi trozo pacho son tetralen son sowa tabe tu lame koson toge ne namle tutse wese karma tinga sum rimdan chikchara chungne danigi Neson rimdan chikchara timbale dripshi thakchi namda wanshi top kushi topchin laman geshin timbe jingi la para gyur. Verse 84, verso 84. Chincho tamba jitsun lama la chujin kube sawa tabe tu dele tsawa gombo kenyi gi gishin jitsun zimbra jingi lo lenje tsamshi nyebe de jodi nyega nyordo jibe tsuto ne tome tsedi chawe mi e war tunde nimbo lembra jingi lo ngeson dunge barwe mejine nyingne kunjo sumla kem Nipon gezo tada drubala Tsomba lulen chebra jingelo, ludan lo, tautu tu dunge sumge chutsi mambutse, tame jiro sezo chimbole, tardu shudra kyora jingelo, soga tsonra drawe korwa di gawe tsiltara tongwe lobangne, lauson pawe norge zosonte, tarpe gensen zimbra jingelo, nyamda drowa digun dagi ma, yang chinge kyangbe tsosamne, Tupe pula tsewe ma shintu chumi ninje kyora jingelo Dunge tramo tsamya mi de chin dela namya choshe mebrani Dadan shenla kebra yomi she shende gawa kebra jingelo Simbe chongne di mi de dunga gebe gyurtone Lelen dela kondo sunchete dazen dunchen jombra jingelo Mana che son de la kwebelo taye yonde jungwe gordongne Trowa dida dage charlang kyan sole chebra zimbra jingelo Kona da tuban shende bashi zebai Yonda yonde yewa tobe lo dashe nyamche nubra jingelo Kuba kungi go mana cheze yonde kungi shi Techira dajen jewe nejo la nyamle nyimbo chebra jingelo Tena jetson lama toje che magyo drowe dirib dunga ku Malu tada dala mimpa dan dagede Drogun dedan dembra jingelo Tena jetson lama toje che magyo drowe dirib dunga ku Malu tada dala mimpa dan dagede ge shenla tawai Drogun dedan dembra jingelo tena jetson lama tuje che Magyo drove dirib dunga kun malu tada dala mimbad Dage dege shenla tangwa ye drogun dedan dembra jingelo Nuchu dikpe dribu yongkante midu dunga chatara babgyuro kyang Lenge dribu sebe gyurtone kenge lamtu longra jingelo Dona sangye nawa chisharayan chugu nimbo tongye nyamlengi Chancho semni pewe lamgyurute yide bashi gombra jingelo Chorwa shidan dembe tabge gi trela kanto gomla chorwa da Lojo tamze lapche nyamlengi delchuro tunchen jombra jingelo Tongle lula kyumpe trumde che chamda ninje lape Chile drove chire chancho semni chongra jingelo Dusong gyawa kungi droche lam namda gyase domba Tsomba lulen chebra jingelo Ludan loncho tusum gezo che semche raran debe ngogyurute Chame tonsen pewe mengagi chimbe parchin sobra jingelo Sotara janse sanga domba ye chetsan sogi chirya midechi Gecho dudan simchen tundru pe tsutrin parchin sobra jingelo Malu chogyurute shishin sandru dikshin sokcho kyang Nidrun pemba druje pe sebe parchin sobra jingelo Simchen rere chirya narme pe mena kepa gyatso nego kyang Ninje migyo jancho chotsompe, centro parchen sopra jingelo. Nambra yongwe kyomba ne, choku dempe tombe ne lula. Seji nyambra chobe tinzingi, samden parchen sopra jingelo. Sherabgi chambe shinchan techen danrewa. Tenda nyamsha namge ne chogi, shera parchen sopra jingelo. Chönang gyuma milandan, dambe tonan daso chishinta. Nayan dembra mebe tsutone, gyume tinsin sopra jingelo. Duza meba dan, gyure tenre luwa meba ni. Penso game chokso charwayi, ludru gondo topra jingelo. Tene dorje zimbe tepöngi, trile gyude gyazo jigete. Ngodro tsawa tamze domba na, sole chebra zimbra jingelo. Gyalwe kusumtu, gyurwe rimba tambo ne choki. Tame nashin trima kunchante, kana lagu charwa jingelo. Ninge dabge dudi udatu, gongyo shavsen koba le chungwa. Wese gyulo sondo jobela, sedi ngundu gyurwa jingelo. Lamna masin chiwe duche na, tsenda tsangya lame. Tomga yandan charwe damngagi, tabe shindu drobra jingelo. Dona keshin kewa tamche tu, gombo kyogi drame jesune. Kuson toge sanwa kunzimpe, segi tuwaro gyurwa jingelo. Gongyo kanto ngombra sangepe, korge toma nitu da gyurute. Nega utardo gondo malupa, beme lungi drupe trashi atso. Sangye chedan soge chanamla, chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi, dagi jinso gibe sonamgi. Trola pinchire sangye druparisha. Sangye chedan soge chanamla, chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi, dagi jinso gibe sonamgi. Trola pinchire sangye druparisha. Sangye chedan soge chanamla, chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi, dagi jinso gibe sonamgi. Drola penchire sangye druparish. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the art of perfection, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, as you know, we are in the 9th chapter of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara that talks about wisdom, the correct view of reality. And it is important that developing wisdom is not something that we just do conceptually. It's something that takes time, also because we are extremely deeply conditioned by our own ignorance. So, based on that, we need really to reflect and repeat the concept of the lack of inherent existence many, many times in many different forms. Okay? And Shantideva is helping us through this. So basically, we have here first reflected upon the lack of inherent existence of self. Then after that, there is the lack of inherent existence of phenomena. And then when we go to the lack of inherent existence of phenomena, this reflection is divided first into 4 parts, which is called the 4 anchors of awareness. And it is the body, the sensations, the mind, and the other external phenomena. So basically, we reflect upon the lack of inherent existence of each one of this. Now we got to the point where we were reflecting on the lack of inherent existence of the sensations, and then we were actually yesterday seeing the last part, which was the lack of inherent existence of the causes of sensation, which is contact. Contact is the union of sense object, like form, the sense power, our eyesight, and the sense consciousness. Our eyes sense consciousness. Okay? So when these three get together, we can perceive an object. As soon as we perceive something, we have a reaction of a sensation. It can be of pleasure, unpleasure, or neutral sensation. Okay? So, first we saw yesterday how come sensations lack inherent existence. And then we were looking at the part how the causes of sensation, in this case, the object perceiver, and the sense are actually empty of inherent existence also. So I actually already gave this part from verse 98 to verse 102. I already gave this explanation yesterday in Italian, but the English was lacking, so I will do now the English. Okay. I'll just read the Tibetan once again. No. Cool, no. Krisla, can you get I think the iPad has remained there. I think the iPad is in the office charging. Can you get it, please? I'll have the Tibetan text in it. Thank you. Okay. So, as we go here, it says, and when there is, verse number 98, and when there is no truly existent one that feels, and feeling as well doesn't truly exist, then seeing the situation, O craving, why don't you turn yourself back? Nevertheless, something can be seen and also be touched, through its having a nature similar to a dream or an illusion. Further, a feeling cannot be perceived by a mind from arising simultaneously with it. So, and when there is no truly existent one that feels and a feeling as well doesn't truly exist, then seeing the situation, O craving, why don't you turn yourself back? What happened here is that the one that perceives, we have seen before, that is empty of inherent existence, which means, basically, when we experience any object of pleasure, for example, okay? Let's say we drink something we like, we listen to a beautiful sound, whatever. At that moment, the one that is experiencing pleasure, we experience ourselves just as if we existed in an autonomous way. Like, normally we are not aware of the whole interdependence that exists in that moment. In the same way, when we look at the object of pleasure, we also just see it. Okay, it is there. I have nothing to do with it also. Simply I need it for myself. Okay? But in the moment that we analyze and we observe and we see that both ourselves and also the object of desire, in this case, the object that gives us pleasure, the object, not more than the object that gives us pleasure, the object through which we experience pleasure. Actually, at that moment, we can see that it doesn't exist really as it appears to us in this solid way. In other words, it's like this. If someone comes to us and say, thank you. If someone comes to us and say, we have an object of pleasure, okay, an object of desire, and we really think it's beautiful and special and whatever, and someone comes and says to us, oh, it's not like that, are we going to react? Most probably, if not verbally, at least mentally, we are going to say, oh, come on, that's not true. When we have a very strong desire, when we have a very strong attachment towards anything, what happens? That it's something that is going to make me happy. It's not because I am thinking, because it is good. I like this tea, so the tea is good. It's not a matter if I like it or not, it's because it's the tea's quality, it's not my own quality. It's like, I go to a shop, I see something I want to buy. I think it's beautiful, I think it's so nice. Why do I want it? Because it's good. It's not because I think it's good or whatever. It's simply because the object by its own nature is beautiful and special and whatever. Okay? When there is a person to whom we may have attachment and so on, why do we want to be with that person?
Basically because we think that person is going to make us happy. The presence of that person is going to make us happy. And at that moment, basically, actually, we see it as being truly existent, as being inherently existent as an object of pleasure. No? It's the same thing when we get angry. What happens if we are angry and someone comes to us and starts saying that we shouldn't be angry because the things are not exactly in the way we are seeing it? The person that is telling us not to be angry becomes also an object of anger. Simply because whenever we are angry, we are always, how to say, we are always right. We are never wrong. No? Sure, we are wrong, but we live it as if we were never wrong. So what happens is that if you are angry and I come to you and say, look, this thing is not an object of anger. You shouldn't be angry. And I say, yes, look at it. It's not because I want to be angry. It's because this thing is like this. It is an object of anger by its own truly authentic, autonomous, intrinsic nature. We see it in this way. So actually, that's how we experience. The same thing is with the object of jealousy, of envy, and everything else. So, if in the moment that we have these strong emotions, that can be attachment, aversion, jealousy, envy, hatred, fear, and so on. If we are able at that moment to understand, not conceptually is already good, but not enough really. If we are able to feel, to understand deeply that the object that we have in front of us, of anger, of desire, of attachment, whatever, doesn't exist as an object of anger, of attachment, of desire, and so on, by its own nature, what happens is that desire falls apart. Anger falls apart. It doesn't have anymore a stable ground where to stand. Okay? Because does anybody likes to be angry? When we get angry, our object of anger is an object of anger, not because we want. We are even we are a victim of it, I don't want it to be an object of anger. If it's an object of anger, it's because it is like this, and I cannot do really anything about it, other than destroy it. So, what happened to that is actually that, first of all, it's important for us to understand, it's important for us to see how we grasp at the situations, at the objects as being of inherent existence. And it's not an intellectual point, it's especially if we need to observe when we feel our strong emotions like anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, attachment, and so on. And if we look well, the objects of attachment, of desire, of anger, of jealousy, of pride, and so on, we experience it as if it existed in that way by its own self, not because I am projecting anything into it. Okay? So, what Shantideva is telling us here is that, and when there is no truly existing, inherently existing one that feels, and feeling as well doesn't truly exist, the sensation of pleasure doesn't exist by its own characteristics, then seeing the situation, oh craving, oh attachment, oh desire, why don't you turn yourself back? Which the meaning is, in the moment that actually we can understand, we can perceive that the object of desire and the sensation and so on actually do not exist as it appears to us, naturally the desire doesn't have any more a ground to stand on. Okay? Nevertheless, something can be seen and also be touched. Even though the object that we see, the object that we touch, the object that we listen and so on, the sense objects, even though they lack inherent existence, still we can see, still we can touch, still we can listen. Which means it's not because it lacks inherent existence that it doesn't exist. Okay? So here it says, nevertheless, something can be seen and also be touched, through its having a nature similar to a dream or an illusion. Which means, everything that we see, everything that we listen, everything that we touch exists, but it is like a dream. It is like an illusion. What does it mean to be like a dream or an illusion? To understand that, first we need to see what is a dream. What we mean by a dream. The dream is this experience we have as we sleep, no? And we can dream so many things. Yesterday I gave this example. Let's say I dream I am singing in a musical festival, no? And I'm becoming a very famous, singing beautifully in this musical festival, okay? I never had this dream, but whatever. Me singing in the dream. Let's say the song that is sang, the situation, the people listening, and all of this. In the dream, does it exist? Yes. Does it exist outside of the dream? No. So the point is that, in other words, when I have a dream of whatever, I'm singing in a musical festival and so on, the singing and everything in the dream of the dream exists, but it doesn't exist as a real situation. Okay? If I say, if I dream of an elephant running after me, the elephant in the dream exists, but it doesn't exist as an actual physical elephant. Okay? So what happens is that everything that we perceive in our dreams do exist in the dream, as a dream. But it doesn't exist as an actual object. Another example that we can give, which is illusion, when we have a projection in a screen, that's actually an illusion that we are creating. The same thing is when we see our face in the mirror, is also an illusion. Do we see our face in the mirror? No. We have never seen our face, actually. No one of us have ever seen our own face. The only thing that we see in the mirror is the reflection of our face that we think is our face. So, it's an illusion in the moment that we believe that it is our face. If I look in the mirror and say, oh, look at the reflection of my face, then it's not an illusion. But if I look in the mirror and I say, look at my face, okay, which means it appears as being my face and I believe in it. Okay? Similar, when you have, for example, the projection in a screen, no? And we have the first projection that was done, which is said to be this projection of the train coming forward in the direction of the people, no, watching. And the first time that people will watch this, they would get afraid, because they have never seen a projection before, and they will feel like a train was coming towards them. So, was there actually a train coming towards them? No. Was there the appearance of a train coming towards them? Yes. Okay. So, the appearance of the train, it's true. The image, the light projecting on the screen is true. It does exist. But it doesn't exist as an actual train. Okay? So what's the illusory aspect of the projection? Being a real train, which is not. Okay? Similar to that, phenomena appear to us, phenomena do exist, but they appear to us in a way that is different of the way how they actually do exist. Okay? So phenomena appear to us as if they existed by their own characteristics, as if they existed inherently, independently of everything else. But actually, they are not like this. Everything is interdependent. Everything depends on causes and conditions, on the parts, on the relationship, on the dependence between cause and conditions, on the dependence between parts and the whole, on the dependence between the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name. In other words, on the relation between the object of perception and the perceiver. Okay? Everything exists in this dependence, which we call the interdependence. So, even though it exists in this way, we do not perceive, and whenever we see something, it appears to us as being of inherent existence, as existing by its own nature. So, this is what we mean that is like a dream. And the point is that not only it's like a dream, we don't know that we are dreaming. It's like being under a spell of an illusion and not knowing that we are under the spell of the illusion. No. I don't know, have you ever seen a good illusionist? It's really quite shocking somehow, you know. I saw some of them. Both of them were Indian, actually. One time I was in India. This is, for me, I think this maybe was the most shocking experience in this sense. I was in this little circus near the monastery. It was a very small town, you know, really in the countryside of India. And came this circus. It was all falling apart. And then they had these little things. And then there was the place of the magician. So we went there to see. They had all wooden benches, people sitting on the floor. There was no black background, nothing like this. Just a little tent full of holes and one little wooden stand on top, okay? Nothing really. No infrastructure whatsoever. And then there was the guy, he was doing many things, but some of them were some stupid tricks, but some of them were really, I couldn't get. Two things. One, he had a vase made of metal. Normal vase for water, and he put it in front of the stage. And then he would come and he would empty the vase in the floor. It was the earth, you know, don't know any. So he would empty the water in front of us, completely, show the vase and empty. And just put again in front of us. After 2 minutes, he would take the vase, empty it again. And then after 2 minutes, he would empty it again. No, the whole thing, he was always emptying this vase. I don't know how the water was going in there anyhow. Maybe he had compartments inside a vase. We never know these things can be. But anyhow, the most amazing thing that I saw was that suddenly he took a little boy. He passed his hand in front of the boy's face and looks like the boy fainted. And he took the boy in his hand. He did like this. No, it's like if he took the boys like this. Then as he did like this, the boy got perfectly straight. Then he took the hand out and the boy was floating in the air. And then he took the circle of a bicycle, when you have the bicycle wheel without the little, the race. Then he took this and he started going around the boy like this with that, no? Passing it around. And everybody was just looking. And then suddenly someone else put their hand again, he did like this, and the boy became like, was straight, and he fell down like fainted. And then after he passed again the hand in his face, and then the boy like wake up completely not understanding what was happening, you know. And for me it was like, oh, you know, whatever it was very well done. If it was really floating, if it was really not floating, whatever it was, the illusion, if it was an illusion, it was perfectly done. Okay. So what happened is that in Tibet, in the old texts, when it talks about illusion, it talks about the illusions are made through the power of mantra and substances. Okay? We call. Through the mantra of spell and substance. Substance that can be in the air, something that you can drink, you know. I think many people had illusions by having substances, you know. So what happened is that the point is the following. When you are under the spell, when you are under the substance, and you don't know that you are under the spell, you believe in what you see. If you are under the spell and you know that you are under the spell, you know that that's just an illusion, it still appears to you as being true, but you know that it's not. It's like dreaming and knowing that you are dreaming. Still you see the elephant, and it appears to you as being a true elephant, but you know that it's a dream. You still see yourself singing whatever, but you know that it's a dream. No, I had this experience the first time when I was a kid. I was quite young, I think I was 5 or 6 or whatever, something like this. And then I dreamt that I went down out of my bed. In the house my father's house, there was this staircase going down. Still there. So I dreamt that I jumped from the staircase down, and I was afraid because I was falling down, and it looked like in a dream much, much higher than actually it is. And when I was about to touch the ground, I woke up. And when I woke up, I said, oh, this was a dream, but let's try to do it again. Then I fell asleep and I did again, but I knew it was perfectly a dream. So I went there, I jumped because I had fun jumping out of it, you know. And when I was about to touch the ground, I woke up. Then I said again, I think I did 3 or 4 times. Then I got bored and I simply slept normally. But the point is that when I was jumping and doing all of this, it seemed like real, but I knew it was not. I knew it was a dream. So when we are dreaming and we know it's a dream, still things appear to us as being true, but we know it's not. So we have freedom to choose what to do. Okay. Similar to that, the path to enlightenment is very much compared to the dreamlike state. That's why this example is done so many times. Because in the beginning, as we are, most of us are now, at least as I am now, I don't know if maybe I am here on my path to enlightenment, you are all Buddhas helping me on my path. I don't know, I cannot judge you, I can only judge myself. So I know I am, at least in this moment, where everything appears to me as being of inherent existence, and I believe in it. Okay? So it's like if I'm in a dream, and at the same time that I am in this dream, I don't know that I am dreaming. Okay? So what is the description of the path to enlightenment? We call it the 5 paths. The first step on the path to enlightenment is actually that of falling in love with enlightenment. It's basically falling in love with enlightenment. It's basically like wishing deeply and profoundly to reach enlightenment. Okay? It's like anything that we do, any moment that we are, it doesn't matter. Like if we fall in love with someone, what do we think when we wake up about that person? We see a flower, we see the rain, we see the sun, and the mind goes always back to the same place. We are trapped somehow. In the same way, if we fall in love with enlightenment, anything that we do every day when we wake up, our mind is always directed towards enlightenment. Okay? This is the first step on the path to enlightenment. This is when we enter the so-called path of accumulation. After that, we need to go through the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. So how does this happen? To realize emptiness, which is the most important thing, because the whole path to enlightenment is basically very much connected to the fact of eliminating ignorance and eliminating the imprints of ignorance. Okay. So this process is divided first of all into 3 parts, which is called listening, comprehending or reflecting, and meditating. Tösamgomsum in Tibet. So first we need to develop what's called the wisdom of listening. The wisdom of listening we develop when, in the moment that we have what is so-called in Tibetan is called yiche, which would be in English a correct, how do you say, presupposizione, assumption, correct assumption. Okay. A correct assumption means when we are sure about something, but we don't have the logic, we don't have the actual conceptual understanding clear, and at the same time also we never had a direct experience about it. We simply listened about it, we read about it, and we are sure of it, but we really don't know how. So the first step, which we call the wisdom of listening regarding emptiness, is in the moment that we are sure that phenomena lack inherent existence, but we don't know how, really. We have some slight idea, but really don't know how. We are not like 100% sure about it. And we have never had the experience of perceiving the lack of inherent existence. And once we reach that level, which means, okay, we reach the level enough of listening, so what we need to do, we need to reflect upon it. Okay? Then we go through the prayer of comprehension, of reflection. Then we develop the wisdom of comprehension, which means we conclude the process of understanding, of analyzing, and so on, in the moment that we have what is called an inferential valid cognition. Inferential valid cognition is that when we can perceive something correctly through a correct logic, through a correct conceptual understanding. In other words, it means we have no more doubts about it. So, in the moment that I arrive And I say, okay, all phenomena lack inherent existence. Why? Because they are interdependent. I look at a glass and I say the glass cannot exist inherently. Why? Because it is interdependent. It depends on its parts, it depends on causes, it depends on the observer. So it cannot exist by its own self. So this is what happens when we develop this so-called wisdom of understanding, the wisdom of comprehension, sambeshedab in Tibetan. So when we develop that state of mind, we are still in the beginning of the path. It's not enough. We have got now what? An intellectual, clear, correct understanding of emptiness, which is already wonderful. But what happened? We are only going to be in touch with that knowledge when we stop to think. Otherwise, spontaneously, we will still grasp at things as existing by their own nature, by as existing inherently. Okay? Because having a conceptual understanding, it's good, but it's not enough. Because we only access that knowledge in the moment that we stop to think. Otherwise, it's not there. Okay? So, what do we need to do? We need to get familiarized with that knowledge. And this is the process of meditation. So what do we do now? We need actually to go through a process that making it very, tangible, simple. What we do is first we go into meditation, simple, we concentrate on our breath and so on. And then we go through the whole process of analysis of why phenomena lack inherent existence. Okay? So, phenomena lack inherent existence. Why? Because all of it's interdependent, and because being interdependent, it cannot be of inherent existence. So on, we go through this whole process. There are many different, we call logical reasonings to understand the lack of inherent existence. The king of the reasonings to understand the lack of inherent existence is interdependence. But there are many others also. Okay? So, let's say we go through interdependence, we understand that phenomena lack inherent existence, and then we take this whole mind, that's conceptual understanding, clearly that phenomena lack inherent existence, and we take this mind and we simply hide it behind a curtain, on the little angle of the room. And then what we do is we observe any object. We can observe our body, we can observe a sensation, we can observe our mind, we can observe the self, we can observe the bottle, we can observe anything. Okay? So we observe the object, and we let the mind that grasps at inherent existence to appear. We let the object appear to us as it normally does, as being of inherent existence. And we let the mind that grasps at such inherent existence to appear also. It's not a simple process, especially in the beginning if we are not used to it, because it's not conceptual, it's not intellectual. We must let our natural way of grasping at phenomena as being inherent existence to appear. When that mind appears into us, clearly, then the mind that was hiding behind the curtain comes out and say, oh, I got you. How come phenomena are like this? No, it cannot be. Look at the glass. No, the glass cannot exist by its own true nature. It depends on its parts. It doesn't exist. It's simply many parts put together that you have given a name to it. It's nothing more than that. It doesn't exist as a glass independently of the name that you are assigning to it as glass. And then you go through the whole logic until that mind that grasped at the inherent existence of the glass is not there anymore. And then when we get to the conclusion it lacks inherent existence, then we stick to that conclusion with a single pointed concentration as long as we can. In the moment that this single pointed concentration on the lack of inherent existence brings us a sensation of pleasure both to the body and to the mind, which we call shamatha, and we can stay for a very long time in this single pointed concentration meditation into this samadhi, we have developed what is called the wisdom of meditation on emptiness. Okay? And we are still in the path of accumulation. Then what happens is that we go on with this meditation, on, And once we get used to it, then we start to do something more, which is in the same time with that we get single-pointed, concentrated on the lack of inherent existence. A little part of our mind, Panpenche Losang Chogyal Gyaltsen describes it as having a clear water lake with a very clear water, without any movement in the water, which is the mind that is very calm and perfectly perceiving one object of meditation. While it's like this, there is a little fish that starts to swim around the lake and observe the whole lake without letting the water on the surface to move. Okay? The water on the surface is our single-pointed concentration. The fish going around is a little part of our mind that analyzes the object of meditation. Okay? In the beginning, this is difficult. As we go on through it, it becomes pleasurable. It brings pleasure both to the body and to the mind. When we reach that state, we develop what is called vipassana, or the higher view, akton. When we reach that state, this is called the path of preparation. Okay? Then we stay in that state of meditation for a long time, and by continuing with that level of meditation, what happens is that gradually we get more and more familiarized with our object of meditation, that is emptiness, and the lack of inherent existence, and slowly, because what is actually our object of meditation right now? It's the mental image of emptiness. Because we have a concept. Everything is through a concept that we have understood. Luckily, our concept is correct. Okay? So, by meditating it again and again in it, slowly, it's like if the mental image and the actual object start to get nearer and nearer, until a moment in which we can perceive they melt into each other, and we can understand the lack of inherent existence in a non-conceptual way, which is called a direct experience. Okay? It's a direct, valid cognition. It's a direct experience of the lack of inherent existence. It's an experience that is beyond words. It's unexpressible with words and thoughts. Why? Because it's non-conceptual. Okay? We can try to explain later, but it's not possible. It's like trying to tell someone how it feels to eat chocolate ice cream. And the person have never had ice cream or chocolate in his life, you know. How can you explain to someone what's the sensation of how is chocolate ice cream? It's like this great Tibetan scholar called Amdo Gendun Chöpel. He went to India in the 1800 whatever, in the beginning of the 1900 whatever. And then when he came back, he was telling everything that he experienced, and he was trying to tell Tibetans what was mango, you know. And he said, mango is this fruit of this size, this color. Because he has his diary of travel, and he was describing everything. So it was very nice. And in his describes, mango, it tastes like new curd, just made curd, yogurt, with a lot of sugar. Maybe, you know, but that's the closest he could get to try to help people understand. But you will never know what I mean by when I talk about mango if you have never had a mango in your life, you know. So what is that? It's like the non-conceptual experiences are not possible to be transmitted through a conceptual thought. There are no words that can express a non-conceptual experience. We can try, but it's not possible. Right? We try to express our feelings. We can put thousands of words for it. But the other person listening will never feel the same feeling that we are trying to express. Okay? Similar to that, the non-conceptual realization of emptiness can never be put into words. That's why it's called masam jeme. Cannot be taught and cannot be said, cannot be perceived conceptually. Okay? It's said that the experience of realizing directly emptiness, when the person gets out of the state of meditation and try to tell to someone, it's like someone that is, how do you call it in English, deaf and dumb, right? That is trying to tell a dream. And you don't have the words, you don't know how to say the dream, because already telling a dream is difficult. Imagine if you don't know, even you don't have the word, you don't know how to talk. it becomes even more difficult. No? So it's like, that's why it's a deep experience. But the important thing here is that it is a direct experience. It's quite simple to know that because of the result afterward, which is the following. Actually, there are many explanations of what is this experience, how it is. You see, it is detailed explained. Okay, I'm not going to go into that right now. But we debate a lot about it. There is a lot of very detailed explanation of how this experience actually is, and how you get to it, and all of this. But the main thing is that when someone has this experience of having of realizing direct emptiness, enters into what's called the path of seeing, and actually gets out of samsara in that moment. When a person gets out of samsara, when this person has a direct experience of realizing the lack of inherent existence, because that's the moment you cut away ignorance. Okay? So, when the person gets out of that moment of meditative concentration, what happens is like if you are dreaming, but you know that you are dreaming clearly. Until that moment, you still didn't know that you were dreaming. After this experience, everything that you perceive, you know that it's like in a dream. Because everything appears to you as being of inherent existence, but you know that it's not, because you have experienced it clearly. It's similar to the fact, let's say, let's try to make an example. Everybody believes in something, okay? Whatever, now I'm trying to find, let's say there is a beautiful statue, golden statue, and everybody believes it's really made out of gold. And everybody says, and there is protection, and there are many types of security and cameras and all the thing, because it cannot be stolen, and it's said to be, I don't know how many kilos of gold, and so precious, and so on. And everyone believes so much that it's made out of gold, okay? And then suddenly, one day you are able to go there, and you push the statue, and you see that it's so light, it's actually made out of paper, you know? And then, like it happened in Brazil actually, there is a Theravada temple. They had a beautiful statue of Buddha, golden, but it was made of papel maché. How do you call it in English? Huh? Yeah, papel maché, like this paper basically, and golden. So the thieves came to steal it. And when they saw it was made out of paper, they got so angry, they destroyed everything. But let's say that everybody believes it's out of gold. We go there, we touch it, we see that it's not gold, that it's actually made out of paper. Okay? After that, for such a long time, we have believed it was made out of gold. When we see to it, what we think, look at the golden statue. Oh, but I know it's not gold. Why? Some people had told me before it was not of gold, have given me the reasons, but I was not so sure about it. When I looked at it, it always seemed like being a golden statue. Now that I have touched it, nobody can tell me the opposite anymore. So anytime when I see it, I'm so used to see it as a golden statue, then I look to it and I say, look at the golden statue. But I know that it's not, because I have touched it directly myself. Okay? Or let's say you have flowers, and every time you come, you see the same flowers in the throne, and you think they are fake flowers, out of plastic. But one day you go there and you touch them, and you see that they are true. But it appears to you as being a plastic flower, because you have been seeing it as a plastic flower for such a long time. But you know that they are not. So when you see it, you see, look at a plastic flower that are not of plastic. Look at a golden statue that is not of gold. So this is similar to that. Once the practitioner has had a direct experience of emptiness, after that, everything appears clearly as being empty of inherent existence. It appears as being of inherent existence, but the practitioner knows clear that it's not like that. So it's like being in a dream, knowing very clearly that you are dreaming. Okay? From that point, until the point of actually waking up and not dreaming anymore, it takes a long time, which is called the path of meditation. Okay? And actually, if we divide the whole process to enlightenment into 3 parts, getting out of samsara is the first part. We still have 2 parts to go. Okay? Which is eliminating the imprints of ignorance. In other words, is that we need to eliminate the appearance of inherent existence. And this goes through familiarization, which is called the path of meditation. Normally it's divided into 3 eons. The first eon is to get out of samsara, the other 2 eons is to eliminate the imprints of ignorance, okay? But it's a relative number. Anyhow, the point is, we need to understand how this process is actually happening, because this I explained yesterday, in order for us to grab a little bit at the point, what do we mean by enlightenment? What do we mean by awakening? One of the meanings of awakening is because now we are in a dream, not knowing that we are dreaming. Slowly we should get to the point where we know that we are dreaming, but we are still dreaming. When we reach enlightenment, is the moment where there is not even anymore the appearance of phenomena as being of inherent existence. There is only constantly the direct perception of everything as being of interdependence, as being completely connected one thing to each other, and there is not anymore this sensation of things appearing to exist by their own characteristics, by their own self. Okay? So this is what we call enlightenment. When do a person reach enlightenment? In the moment that there is no more ignorance, no more grasping at inherent existence, and there is also no more the appearance of inherent existence. And at that moment, for the person, the Buddha doesn't make any distinction between relative and absolute. It's only one. Until that moment, we are always making distinction. Okay? So, this is just to say, because here it was talking about the dream, no? Nevertheless, something can be seen and also be touched through its having a nature similar to a dream and an illusion. Which means I can see the table, I can see everything. Why? Because causes and conditions, because of the parts, because of the imputation of the name, it appears to me as if it exists independently of all of that, but actually it's not like that. What happened is that when we say that dreams are not true, it's not like that. The dreams are true in the sense of what you see in the dream is an image that you are seeing. It exists in the dream. Okay? When we say that it's not true, even if there is a prediction, okay? What a person can perceive in dream is something that may happen. It's not seeing what is happening. Okay? It's a different thing. No. What happened is that dream, the difference is the following. We can have a sensation of, there are different types of dream. Okay, we could go on about dreams, but there are different types of dreams. Some dreams we can feel that this is just like a sort of a whatever idea. Other dreams we can feel that it's something very strong and very vivid and very real. Okay? The experience that we have inside the the experience we have inside the dream is a real experience. It's not a fake experience. Okay? What we mean that saying when we say that it's not real, in the sense that, let's say I dream with another person. Okay? I dream that I meet this person, then we go to the seaside, whatever, and so on, and it feels very real. Okay? But this person is sleeping on the other side of the bed, or is sleeping in the other room, or whatever. Were we actually really going to the seaside? No. It was a dream. This doesn't mean that the sensation of the dream was not true. This doesn't mean that the experience within the dream was not true. Okay? So it's very important to understand this distinction, because when we have a dream, is the experience real or not? Yes, it's real. If I suffer, if I have a nightmare and I suffer so much during the nightmare, is it real suffering? Yes. If I have a lot of joy, is it real joy? Yes. So the experience is real. It's not a fake experience. Okay? But at the same time, what happens is that if I dream with another person that we are going to a place, okay? It's like one time one person came to me and this person believed very much in dreams and said, oh, yesterday we went to that place together. And I say, I'm sorry, I am in Spain. I am completely somewhere else. I don't know what you are really talking about. Oh, but I dreamt that we were doing this. I said, okay, you are dreaming, but I'm sure we were together doing that. And I said, look, I don't, not to be nice to the person finally, I said, look, at least I am not aware of having been gone there. Okay. But the point is that we can have dreams. The experience that we have within the dream is not a fake experience. But physically, it doesn't happen as it appears in the dream. Okay? This is what we mean when we say that it's not true. Okay? Predictions, what a prediction can be, is that we can have a sensibility, because things don't happen only in the gross level. There are many levels how things happen. It's like predictions, from my point of view, is like more or less, let's say I am in a car, driving at 180 kilometers per hour. The brake is not working and there is a wall in front of me. Okay? If I have the understanding of all of this, can I predict that I'm going to hit the wall? Yes. Similar to that, okay, there are people through many different ways that can have sensibility of perceiving the many causes and conditions that are happening. And the predictions never come exactly as things will happen. They come through symbols, they come through many different ways. Okay? And then normally they are not like exactly how the actual thing happened. So it's a representation of what may happen through a sensibility. This is what it happens. So this sensation, this representation is true as a representation, but it's not true from the point of view of actually, as I was dreaming, that was actually happening. That's what we mean that it was not true. Similar phenomena exist, but they are like a dream because they do not exist as they appear. Because when I am in the dream and something bad happens, I feel afraid. I feel anger or whatever. I feel attachment, I feel joy, I feel suffering. But the phenomena do not actually really exist as it appears to me. Okay? So this is what we mean when we say dreamlike. Okay? Anyhow, if we enter into the subject of dream, we can go on. There is a lot to say about that, but this is another subject, okay? Okay, so then let's go on. So when we say dreamlike, just to understand, I just wanted to share with you, it's not actually inside this part of explanation of the text, but I thought was important yesterday, to explain the process of enlightenment, to understand that there is actually something possible. First, you need to have an intellectual understanding, then you need to develop concentration through it, meditation, then you familiarize your mind until it's possible to realize it directly. And through this way is how actually why you get out of samsara when you eliminate completely ignorance, because when eliminating ignorance of grasping at inherent existence, there is no more any solid ground for envy, attachment, hatred, or any other mental defilements. It simply cannot sustain itself anymore. Okay? So, further, a feeling cannot be perceived by a mind from arising simultaneously with it. And though a previous one can be remembered by one that arises later, it can be experienced by it. In short, a feeling can't experience its own self, and it can't be experienced by something else. As there is no truly existent one that feels, then feeling cannot exist absolutely. So, in this bundle of lack of true nature, who can be injured by it? A mind is not situated in cognitive sensors. No, sorry, this is already the next part. So the point that is bringing here again is coming back to the objects of sensation. It's like sometimes we may suffer for something that happened yesterday. We remember a sensation of suffering and we suffer from it. And it may look like we are experiencing the suffering of yesterday. Or we may suffer for something that will happen and looks like we are suffering for what will happen tomorrow. But it's not like that. Because the actual sensation is something that we can only experience in the present moment. You know, when it finishes, it finishes. What I can have is the memory of the suffering. So this becomes the object of perception, and through that memory, I come to suffer again in the present. Okay? And here comes the definition of past, present, and future. Past are the causes that have already had conditions and so have already had results. Present are the causes that are having conditions and so are having results. Future are the causes that have not yet had conditions and so have not yet have results. Okay? So, what is actually, in other words, the past? Are the causes that were created and the memories that we have, basically. There's no much more than that. So when we suffer from the past, actually, we're not suffering because of a sensation. We're suffering because of a memory that we have of something that has happened. In the same way, when we suffer for something in the future, actually we are simply suffering for a mental image of something that who knows maybe might happen. Okay? But if we really observe well in our life, we suffer much more from the fear of suffering. We suffer much more for what may happen and what have happened already than what is actually happening right now. Okay? So, if we understand this clearly and we say, okay, what is happened, what is gone is gone. It's just the sensation of suffering is not there anymore. I don't need to suffer up of it. And what may happen in the future, who knows if it's going really to happen or not, you know? It's what I like to call to pre-suffer and to re-suffer. Okay? We don't need to re-suffer. It was already once enough. And we don't need to pre-suffer. If it happens in the way how we expect it, we suffer 2 times. Or actually much more, because when we pre-suffer, we suffer so much. It's like being so much worried about what is going to happen, then when it actually happens, even though it's not as bad as we expected, and all the suffering that came before is much worse than the actual suffering of the moment. Okay? So, what is bringing also here is the fact that, first of all, the sensation cannot happen simultaneously with the object that we see. There is a gap of time in between. I see something, it arises to my mind, I give an imputation of a name, I give a projection to it, I assign a value to it, and then from that I have a reaction. Pleasure, of suffering, and so on. It's not simultaneously. And in the same way, what happens is that whenever we think of sufferings and pleasures related to the past or to the future, it's basically what's the object of contact? Our mental images, memories, ideas. So if we really think, well, great deal of our suffering is simply created by our own stupid way of thinking. If we were able to simply live well in the present, not worry of the future, and do not re-suffer the past, we have quite a good life. You know? If we put in a scale all our sufferings, and we have two, how do you call it? In the scale you have 2 plates, right? In one plate is physical suffering, the other plate is mental suffering. Okay, which one gets heavier? Mental suffering. And then if we divide mental suffering again into a scale, and we put mental suffering that is in the present, and mental suffering related to the past and the future, which one gets heavier? Past and future. Why our scale of mental suffering is heavier than the one of physical suffering? Because we are too rich. This Song Rinpoche, one of the gurus of Rinpoche, used to say, the sufferings are of 2 types, physical suffering and mental suffering. The rich suffer, the poor suffer mostly of physical suffering. the rich suffers mostly of mental suffering. By the end of the day, they suffer in the same way. You know? When we have a real physical suffering, for example, if we are in pain, if we are in hunger, do we have a lot of mental suffering at that moment? No. No. Instead, when everything is fine, we have food, we have good food, we have people around us that are nice to us, we don't need really to worry about anything. You know, everything in the present moment is fine, then what we do, we create suffering. Oh, this may happen, that may happen, this didn't go in the way how I expected it should be, blah, 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 blah. And then we create conflict, we create so many things. Like, this is basically because of this, there's so many things. I don't know if I go too much out of the theme, if we go too much of that. But what happened is that in the moment that we believe that phenomena, sensations, everything exists out of their own characteristics, we even believe that the projection that we have of the future exists independently of cause and conditions. It is as we expected. So when things don't happen in the way we expect, what happens? We get upset, we get frustration. I expect you always to be in that way. I expect everything, I don't know, you know. It's like we have something and suddenly this thing, it breaks, okay? Can we get upset if something breaks? Say we have a nice car and suddenly the car breaks, or anything else, you know. We can get upset, no? If, okay, making an example a little bit more hard, if someone dies, no? When something breaks, oh, but I have had it for such a long time, it never broke before, why it need to break now? Could we make this question to ourselves? It's quite a stupid question, but still, we can make that. Why? Because we expect it to be forever in that way. Because it appears to us as existing inherently. It appears to us as existing permanently. But it's not like that. Why do people die? Because they were born. What other answer can I give? We are impermanent. No? But we do not perceive this impermanence in ourselves and everything else. So we expect things always to be in the way how we project our mind. We expect things always to be in the way how we expect them to be. And then when things do not happen in the way how we expect and in the way how we project it, we suffer. As if we were a victim, as if something is wrong about reality. But simply what happens is cause and conditions were put together and things happen in the way how they happen. And what does that mean? If things are as they are because of causes and conditions, I can make them differently by creating the right causes and conditions. I can interact with reality constantly. If phenomena were of inherent existence, if they were to exist as they appear by their own characteristics, then I would have really no choice, no freedom. But because everything is interdependent, and I am also interdependent, I am also interacting with reality. If there is any aspect of my own experience of reality that I don't like, that it generates suffering or whatever, what can do? I can start to interact with it positively so that it becomes different. No? For example, if we get sick, why are we sick? Like this morning I woke up with a throat stroke. No? Why? I don't know. Causes and conditions were there together that I have this, you know. I don't need to stay blaming anyone or anything for that. Simply, positive causes and conditions, because my sickness and my body and everything else is interdependent, what do I need to do? I need to put a positive interdependence in order to change the situation that I don't like. So I would drink hot tea, I would try to speak less, which I'm not doing, but I will do things that will help to make myself better. Which means the fact that phenomena are interdependent, it means we have the freedom to change things. How? By interacting positively with our thoughts, with our words, with our actions. And this is where our freedom lies. Okay? So, in this way, there is no point in worrying too much about the past. We need to learn with the past. There is no point in worrying too much about the future. But this doesn't mean that we should not direct. We should be coherent in our actions in the present. Then things in the future will flow smoothly in the right way, even though very often things will happen in a way that we did not expect. Okay? But the point that it's bringing here is like, as there is no truly existence, one that feels, then feeling cannot exist absolutely. Which means even the sensations that we have of pleasure and suffering and all of this, it doesn't exist by its own self as it appears. Because when we have a sensation of pleasure or suffering, how does it seem to us? As if it is interdependent, or it's like it is. Like when we have suffering, we are a victim of suffering. We don't want to suffer. We try to take away suffering, you know. But it doesn't work to try to take away suffering. Say, I don't want to suffer. It's not working. I can shout as much as I want. I can cry as much as I want that I don't want suffering. It's not going to work. What I need to do? I need to create a positive interdependence in order for there not to be suffering. Why? Because suffering is interdependent. It's not something that simply appears out of nothing and is totally independent of everything else. Why do I suffer? Because there is objects of perception, there is my sense powers, there is my sense consciousness, then the imputation of the name, and then all of this put together, I experience it in a way that I don't want to experience, so I feel suffering on it. Okay? So, if I don't want to have that suffering anymore, what do I need to do? I need to generate a positive interdependence in order to abandon that suffering. And very often we just need to take one part of the whole reality and we make it different, and then we can change it. We can change our perception, we can change the object, we can change so many things. Okay? So, feeling, pleasure, suffering, and so on does not exist inherently. It is also totally interdependent. It depends on causes, conditions, on parts, on the observer. Okay. Bene. So with this we conclude actually the translation of yesterday. Okay. So we have behind there Dr. Wanchuk is reading the Getompa. Getompa, it means the 8,000 verses on perfection of wisdom. The teachings, the sutras of Buddha on perfection of wisdom, there is a very short version. There is the Heart Sutra. Then there is the short middle version, that is the one that he's reading, that is 8,000 verses. Then there is a longer version of 20,000 verses, and then there is the very long version of 100,000 verses. Okay? And basically, the one of 8,000 verses, the same thing repeated 8,000 times, more or less. Okay, I'm just making it too simple, but it is like talking about the empty of inherent existence in many, many different ways and examples, in a way that by repeating it and by seeing slowly, it gets in, and then there is no more space for inherent existence at anywhere. It's just to show us that we need to repeat it so many times. We need to go into it. Because it's not just like an academic intellectual understanding. I understood things like inherent existence. Okay, what's the next concept to understand? It's not like that. It's a concept that just as a concept, there is no much benefit. We need to make it part of our life. We need to make it part of our perception of reality. Sure, there are. But it's something that very, very, very difficultly you will have anyone talking about. Especially I think in all Buddhist traditions, but I can talk very clear about the tradition that I'm part of. It is said that all realizations must be like a lamp, light inside a vase. It means our realizations should be kept for ourselves. Never should talk about it. For many different reasons. So, I am sure, I have no doubt that there are many great masters and many great practitioners, and even, for example, not long ago, a few months ago, there was a monk that passed away in Serpon Monastery in the south of India. And in the moment, he was a very simple monk, actually, working very hard, good practitioner, but was not like, oh, the most venerated monk in the monastery. And when he passed away, he showed signs of very high realizations, which basically is the fact that in the moment of death, if a person has a great level of concentration and has the realization of emptiness and so on, it is possible to stay in meditation at the end of the process of death, which we call clear light. And why? Because at that moment, there is no more gross mind, there is no more subtle mind, there is only the very subtle mind. So it's like entering into meditation on emptiness with the very subtle mind. It's a way to cut the ignorance from the root. Okay? And how do we know if a person is doing that? It's because the person dies in a way that even though the of normal gross death is already gone, in the area of the heart, it still remains warm for, in this case, for more than 20 days. Okay? So you can see the person is actually dead because there is no more heartbeat and so on, but the body does not smell. And at the same time, all the hands and so on are cold, but around the area of the chest, where is the subtle mind, it remains little warm. And you can see that the expression of this, when a person is alive and when the person is healthy even more, we have something that we call in Tibetan like the light of the face. There is a complexion, how do you say that in English? Like a glow that we have. When the person dies, this glow goes away. And you can see very clear in this case is that the person is dead, but the glow is still there. And that remains for a long time. And this is one of the signs that in history of Buddhism, we always had of realizations that we see people that before dying, we don't know really what is happening inside them, and they will never talk about it. Very rarely someone will ever talk about it. Great masters, they would talk about their realizations in what is called their secret biography. That is normally published only after they die. And that it's where they tell about their inner experiences. No? And we have many experiences of these levels of realizations and so on. So it's something that is possible, something that is there, but it's not something that we'll find anyone saying, and you will never find any teacher, any master going to teach and say, yesterday I was meditating and I experienced this in that moment. It's something that only if it was really like a very, 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 very exceptional. Not to say never, but something normally would never happen. Okay? So I believe there are many realizations we can see. Like, I had one master of mine that was also one of the gurus of Rinpoche. Thanks to Rinpoche, I also received teachings from him. The one. His name was Kachen Losang Sopa Rinpoche, the abbot of Tashilumpo in India. And he was my first philosophy teacher. I was a small kid. I was only 12 or 13, something like this. And I would go to him and he would give me the first teachings on logics and dialectics and the first teachings on Buddhist philosophy. And then I was just a kid and I heard that he didn't have shadow. No? He didn't have a shadow in his body. And I always thought, because this is in the texts on Tantra, there is one realization, there are realization, and there are signs of realization that we can see. One of the signs of one of the highest realization of enlightenment is not having a shadow, which we call one of the signs of developing what is called the rainbow body or illusory body. Okay? And every day I would go like 2 or 3 times a week to receive teachings from him. He would be sitting on his bed. Behind there was the window. I was in the floor in front of him. And then he would be teaching. And I started observing, and I would see that the shadow of the table and the objects in the table, the shadow of everything was very strong. And then his shadow was like the shadow of glass, almost transparent. And then I asked to him at that time, I was just a kid. So I asked, you don't have shadow? Isn't this true? I'm seeing like this. And then he didn't say anything, not yes or no, He simply, just change whatever subject, So there are many ways through which we can see signs. I have had this experience. For me, He's one of the greatest, most amazing persons I have ever met in my life, in all levels. So, but just to conclude this aspect, when we talk about realizations, it is said at the same time, and I believe very much, that the greatest of all realizations is wisdom and love and compassion. Is to be able to abandon the 8 mundane dharmas, is to be able to really dedicate oneself for the benefit of others, to really to be free from one's selfishness and to dedicate oneself with real love and compassion towards others. Because mundane realizations like the ability to fluctuate or the ability to have, clairvoyance and knows other people's mind, and there are so many things that is possible to develop. You know? But Lama Tsongkhapa, in Tibet, in the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, people liked very much all these types of things, like learning how to stay without eating or without breathing, and learning how to levitate and all these type of things. And Lama Tsongkhapa finally, he put it very clear, he said, you can pass years of your life dedicating yourself to be able to levitate. Wonderful. Or to stay without eating, or to develop types of clairvoyance. But when you die, you lose all of this and you're reborn again, and you are from zero. The same situation. The real realizations that you need to put effort is to develop true love and compassion, to develop true wisdom, to abandon attachment towards worldly things, to develop real, which is called a real love towards oneself, to develop. These are the real realizations that we should look and we should get mostly amazed. Like, I'm sure if we take a master that comes here to teach and then suddenly, sits and start levitating, we will all go like making prostrations and saying, oh, look, what a wonderful master, he's able to levitate, wow, how special, and so on. But, so what? You levitate, then what do you do with that, What is really amazing is when we have someone with true love, true compassion, true wisdom. That's what's the real signs of realization, the most important of all. So this is just something that for me, it's very clear. For me, this is very, very important. But just sticking to the question, there are masters that have great levels of concentration. For example, there was one monk in the monastery also. One day there was a very important ceremony in the monastery, so everyone went to the ceremony, and the monastery was completely empty. So what happened is, the monastery where I lived, we had around 4,000 monks. It was like a big village, big campus. And then when there were this type of ceremonies that everybody went, the monastery got quite empty, the houses. So thieves will come in sometimes to rob things from other villages, whatever. So one time, this elder Geshe, this monk, he didn't go to the ceremony, he was meditating in his room. When he finished his meditation, he opened his eyes and there was nothing more in the room, not even the table in front of him. But he was in such deep state of concentration that he was not listening to anything, he was not perceiving anything around. The robbers came, they took away everything from his house, and he couldn't perceive anything, When I heard this story, some people said, oh, look how stupid he is, he couldn't see anything. No, I said, look how wonderful, If I could get this type of concentration, anybody could steal everything from me, I still would be very happy, So, the point is that there are many examples. There are many monks that, for example, not unnecessarily monks, stay in the caves meditating for years and years, and in many different levels. There are still many people doing this. And also in the West, we're not talking about necessarily only this. Very often we can find people really practicing in the real way, where we less expect. Okay? And it's something possible for all of us. It's not something impossible. It's a matter of having the right guidance, having the right path, and putting the right effort. This is what is necessary. Okay? Sem tremba nyawar shapa gompa, yigi sheba rangshingi mebar tempa, yini wangnam la mine, sukso la ni mim, yini wangnam la mine, sukso la min, parnang min, nangna semim chiming shing shentu yangni nye maying kangshi luming shentu ming dreaming lokswang karmepa tini chungse ming techir semche rangshing nyange de. It's the anchor of awareness on the mind. And it says, a mind is not situated in cognitive sensors, in sights, and so on, nor in the space in between. A mind is an insight, nor is it outside, nor it can be found, in fact, anywhere else. Something that isn't the body, nor something else, neither how do you read that? Commingled? Commingled? Nor separate in any way, isn't anything truly existent at all. Because of that, limited beings are by nature released in paranirvana. Okay, now we'll go to the explanation of that briefly. So, the next two verses are talking about the lack of inherent existence of the mind. And it says, a mind is not situated in cognitive sensors, in sights, and so on. The mind is not in our 5, 6 senses, which means the mind is not in the eye, is not in the nose, is not in the ear, and is not even in the brain. Actually, if we really go to look, the mind is connected to many parts of our body also, but we cannot find the mind in any of these parts, really. Nor is in the space in between the object of perception. The mind is not in the glass, it's not in the bottle, it's not in what I see, and it's not also in between both of them. A mind isn't inside, nor is it outside, nor it can be found, in fact, anywhere else. Here, if we look, is the mind inside the body? If the mind was inside the body, it means that we cannot perceive anything that is not connected directly to the body. Okay? And there are many examples of experiences of people. For example, there were some people that they had near-death experiences. For example, they had brain death. The brain stops completely functioning for a few seconds or a minute or whatever. And then after that, they come back to life. The brain starts again functioning and so on. And there are many witnesses of people that actually, they had very clear memory of what was said and what happened while they were in brain death. What does this mean? That the mind can function without the brain. That can be perception. Very often it's a perception that goes beyond the body. So we cannot say that the mind exists only within the body. This is something that in our Western, modern, common culture, it's very strong. Yesterday we were talking about, we have constructed views, no? This is a constructed view that we have very strong, that the mind exists only within our brain. But actually, there are many, many signs and ways to see that it's not like that. There are many studies showing that telepathy, like the studies that have been done by Rupert Sheldrake, and there are ways showing that telepathy actually exists, and that actually is possible to perceive the thoughts of other people. It's like even animals, they have telepathy very clearly, For example, when you have this big flock of birds flying together very quickly, technically, it's not possible for them to make the movement after seeing the movement of the other one. They make it perfectly together, the movement. Okay? The only explanation is telepathy. It's by understanding the movement that the other one is going to do mentally and then doing the movement together. Okay? Because they have studied a lot. There are many, many scientific studies about this. And finally, we have no other way of explaining it than this. And then there are many other things. There are some very simple and very nice studies. For example, Rupert Sheldrake made a study that he calls the dogs know when their owner is coming back home. And he showed this so clearly. There are videos showing it. It's very nice. Where you can see that in the moment that the person has the thought, I'm going back home, the dog stands up and goes nearby the door. It's not connected with the time, it's not connected with the sound, it's not connected with any of that, it's connected with the thought. And then when the person says, no, I'm not going anymore back home, the dogs get out of the window and go back to what he was doing before. Okay? And we are talking about kilometers and kilometers away. Okay? So, also the fact that when we think about a person and the person calls us. Why? Because on the other side, the person first thinks about us and then calls us. And we receive this perception. So these are all things that many people do not accept, say this is all invention or whatever, simply because the mind cannot perceive anything that is beyond our senses. And the mind cannot exist beyond the brain and so on. Since all time in Buddhism, it has had the opposite. We can see here, Shantideva is saying the mind doesn't exist only inside the body, but also the mind doesn't exist outside of the body. The mind doesn't exist in the objects or in the senses, and not also between them. So the mind cannot be found anywhere in this way. Something that isn't the body nor something else. The mind is not the body, but it's not separated of the body also. It's not also mixed up with the body, commingled with, like, it's not mixed up as one with the body, nor separate in any way. So the mind is not in the body, it's not outside of the body. The mind is not completely mixed as one thing with the body, but it's not also separated of the body. Isn't anything truly existent at all. Because of that, limited beings are by nature released in paranirvana. What does that mean? If we go to look for the body, for the mind, where can we find it? It's a quite difficult quest. No? Even there is, now I forgot the name, but there is a very well-known, I think it's a psychiatrist. Now I'm not sure, a psychiatrist or psychologist. Anyhow, I think it's a psychiatrist. I forgot his name now. Very well known, and he does thousands of speeches every year. Not every year, I think 1,000 speeches is too much a year, but hundreds of speeches in many congresses and everywhere. Really, he did a lot for many, many years. And he does a very nice things that whenever he gives this speech, he makes one small form for everybody to fill up, and then they give them back. And he makes some questions to all of them. And most of the people that goes to his congress and so on are most psychiatrists or psychologists, people that study the mind and so on. And then he makes one of the two main important questions are, in your whole process of study or work, have anyone ever taught you, or have you ever came to a definition of what mind is? And if yes, have you ever came to a definition of what a healthy mind is? Only 4% answered yes. Okay? It's quite shocking. In a sense, we are full of people that work with the mind and don't know what the mind is. Okay? But one of the reasons for that is because it's a very difficult quest, really. To find where is the mind, what is the mind. Because as we go to look for it, more and more, we cannot find it. No? In our Western culture, medicine, until very short time ago, which means 50 years, whatever, all scientists and all the scholars, they were sure that the mind had nothing to do with the body. It's very new in the history of medicine and so on, the connection between body and mind. Buddha in his teaching said, the mind and the body are perfectly connected. You can see that when you get sad, tears comes out of your eyes. Simple, no? So, where is the mind? Is it in the body? Is it outside of the body? Because if the mind is in the body, it cannot exist outside of the body. If it's outside of the body, how come it's also in the body? So if you go to look for the mind, you don't find it. Why? Because we are looking for something that does not exist. I'm not saying that the mind doesn't exist. a truly existent, inherently existing, self-autonomous existent mind doesn't exist. What exists is an interdependent mind. A mind that depends on causes, conditions, parts. We have sensations, we have discrimination, we have objects of perception, 5 senses, memories, so many things put together that form our mind. And when we observe the mind, and we can observe the mind, no? I think all of us can observe our mind, right? Whenever we observe the mind, we say, there is my mind. We can only observe the mind, it only exists as the object of observation, of perception, because we project a name that we call mind, based on all the parts that it creates it. The mind as an object of perception doesn't exist independently of the imputation of the name mind, based on its own parts. So this is actually something very important, because there is a big danger of saying, okay, everything around me is empty of inherent existence, everything is created only by the projection of the mind, so we may see the mind as something so solid. But if our mind was to be of inherent existence, then we really had a big problem. Why? It would be impossible to change it. If my mind is in a way independent of anything else, then we have a real big problem. Instead, as Shantideva says here, the mind isn't anything truly existent at all. When we say truly existent, we mean inherently existent. So the mind isn't inherently existing at all. Because of that, limited beings, which means all of us that are in samsara, at least me, are by nature released in paranirvana. What does that mean? That our true nature is pure. No? Like the crystals we have in the center of the temple, they represent our pure mind, the crystal also. So, represents the pure nature of our mind. So, what is the pure nature of our mind? Some of us may think, oh, the pure nature of my mind means that actually in the true nature I am pure. So, one day I was pure, how come now I am impure? Why am I suffering now? Why do I have jealousy, pride, miserliness, ignorance, selfishness, and so on? What went wrong? Who's to blame, you know? Because the question that comes about is, if my nature is pure, this means that one day I was pure, and something terrible wrong happened, and now I am not pure anymore. So, what happened that day? Who's to blame? You know, let's catch him, because whoever did that, I must do something about it. And if it was not someone else to blame, if it was myself, then even worse, which means I'm not really pure, because if I was pure, why should I get impure, you know? So the problem is not finding the answer. The problem is that we are making the wrong question. The question is not why I became impure. The question is, have I ever been completely pure? The answer is no. I am ignorant now? Yes. Was there a moment in existence that I was not ignorant? No. So then what's all this story about having a pure nature? Are you having fun of me or what, you know? What do we mean by having a pure nature? The true pure nature of our mind is the fact that we are interdependent. Is the fact that our mind lacks inherent existence. Is the fact that our mind is by nature interdependent. It doesn't exist as an ignorant mind by its own characteristic. It exists as an ignorant mind within the whole interdependence that has been created. So in the same way that it's possible to make myself to have less anger, what's the limit that I can have? Eliminating completely anger. It's possible to develop more wisdom. What's the limit? Eliminating completely ignorance. So the fact that our mind is interdependent, it's our true pure nature. Which means our true freedom. Because if I create a positive interdependence, I can change my mind and I can bring it to a pure state. which means a state without any form of suffering or causes of suffering, which means the state of a Buddha. So, what's the ultimate nature of the mind of a Buddha? The nature of the mind of the Buddha is that the mind of the Buddha lacks inherent existence. It's interdependent. So is also my mind. That's why my mind and the mind of the Buddha have the same nature of being free of inherent existence, of being interdependent. And this is why it's possible to change our mind. Because every thought that we have, every action that we do, we are interacting. And it's through the positive interaction that we can make a change, because we are interdependent. We are not truly existent from this point of view. We are not inherently existent as we are. Okay? The mind of a Buddha is interdependent. It cannot degenerate simply because it has entered into a constantly positive interdependence. And actually it cannot get better because it's already in the maximum of what it can be. So it's just constantly pure and good. So that's why we say all Buddhas are of the same nature, but they still have their own individuality. It's not like when we become a Buddha, we do not become one same thing. We still have our own individuality, but we have the same nature. It's not like one have more wisdom than the other. Okay? And there is a definition of mind in Tibetan, which is Selshin Rigpa, which I'm not going to explain now because it's too long. But Sel means clear and cognitive. That's the definition of mind. Clear and cognitive means that it's clear because it's always awakened. The mind never falls asleep. The mind never stops. And it always perceives clearly its own object of perception. And it's cognitive because it always has an object of perception. Now, this is the definition. What is mind? Is that is always awake, and that what perceives reality. That's what is actually perceiving that. Now, it's a long thing. I'm not going to into details of that. When we study the Lorik, when we study the mind and its definitions, we have all of that we go through, okay? But the point that we should get now is that as we observe our mind, it lacks inherent existence. What does that mean? We can change it. That's the actual, that's what finally, we go on and we discuss about the mind and it's being inherently existent or not. And finally we get to this conclusion, our mind lacks inherent existence. What does it mean in practice? That we can change it without so much trouble, really. Why? Because it's interdependent, and so by creating the positive interdependence, it changes. Okay? And that's where our freedom lies. Okay? Oma hun temba lame sangye rinpoche, kyoba lame tamcho rinpoche, dremba lame gendu rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chopa bu.